The story begins with a young girl who simply wanted family happiness and to be loved, but fate had other plans for her. Shulin fell to her knees before her father, trying to convince him that she was the same little girl he had been looking for 18 years before. The man wanted proof. Shuelin couldn't figure out how to prove the impossible. The girl was weak, because all her spiritual strength had been taken from her. She was convinced that her father would definitely be able to recognize her. But the stubborn man said that the girl was not his daughter because she was weak. Shuelin saw Azella next to her father. It was she who took away her spiritual strength and life. The gentleman claimed that his daughter had died 18 years ago. The unfortunate girl was in despair and agreed with her father that she was a fake. Everyone called the girl the thief Shuelin. In the abandoned shelter designed by the Empress, Shuelin, a true princess, could not survive. All the spiritual powers of the elements were taken from her by Azella. The real Princess Shuelina was in for a sad ending. This was the ending of the novel Princess Azella that the girl read. The girl became Shuelin, the princess from the novel with a sad ending. Perhaps the reason was that she was often bullied by the director of the orphanage. Memories gradually began to disappear. It seemed that the teacher hated the girl with all her heart. She wished her a speedy death and often raised her hand against her. But what Shuelin heard when she met her family made her shudder. Her father disowned her because he didn't recognize her as his daughter. Her brother only said that he had one sister, Ella. That scene was to become the girl's future. When she was little, Shuelin did a lot of cleaning. She didn't want to live like that at all. One day, the girl Talina hurried Shuelin and ordered her to go to the dining room. Talina was on good terms with the headmistress, and she also always teased Shuelin. The frightened child rushed into the dining room, but the mean Talina put her foot down so that the girl fell. Unexpectedly, Talina decided to help Shuelin and caught her as she fell. The situation was quite strange, and the frightened Shuelin could not understand why the girl did that. The fact that Talina hadn't teased Shuelin that day alarmed her. The girl even thought that the child was hiding something behind her back. But Talina seemed happy and pulled the girl along. A few minutes later, the girls were already in the dining room. In front of the children stood a huge pot and a plate of potatoes. Shuelina decided to wash the pot and asked the girl to cut the potatoes. The pan was too big, and Shuelin needed help. Talina politely offered her help. When the girl left, Shuelin put her hand in her pocket and couldn't believe her eyes. There she found the principal's ring. Shuelin was scared. She understood that if they caught her, they would accuse her of stealing and beat her all night. Suddenly, Talina's foot slipped on the slippery floor, and the girl fell. The saucepan with the remains of the soup also fell to the floor. Shuelin rushed to help the child. The headmistress came to hear the noise. She asked Talina if she had caused such a mess. The girl started crying and said that it was not her fault, but Shuelin's. Talina complained that the girl had put her on the wrong foot. In fact, Shuelina was very worried about her friend and didn't understand why she had done that. Some of the children shouted that Talina had fallen on purpose and decided to blame someone else. The children also claimed that Talina always bullied Shuelin. Talina was not at a loss and began to ask the principal to search the girl. She also admitted that she had seen a strange shine in her pocket. The child assumed it was a ring. The headmistress was very angry. She began to scold Shuelin for dressing her, feeding her, and taking care of her. The lady was furious because she could not understand how the girl dared to steal her ring. The director was furious. She said she would make Shuelin pay for her actions and called her a useless thief. The girl did not want to listen to the slander. She took off her outerwear and tried to prove her innocence. Surprised, Talina asked the lady to take her word for it. She also claimed that she had seen with her own eyes how Shuelin stole the ring. The children standing nearby began to whisper. They knew for sure that Shuelin had not gone to the principal's office that day, but had been cleaning on the first floor. Furious, Talina understood that everyone was against her. Shuelin wondered why the girl kept changing her suspicions if she hadn't stolen the rings. She found it very strange. The child stood next to the lady, her heart beating fast. The headmistress had no doubt that she had stolen Talina's ring. The woman hit the child in the face and then saw her ring roll across the floor. Talina justified herself by saying that it was Shuelin's prank, and that it was she who had put the ring on her. Shuelin realized that when her friend fell, she slipped the ring at that time. But the child's plan failed, and she herself fell into her own trap. Talina looked at the lady with frightened eyes, claiming that she had not taken anything. But the woman could not be stopped. She hit the girl again, but this time with her foot. The lady seemed terribly angry. She could not believe that some worthless child had stolen her precious thing. The headmistress continued to beat the girl. The child lay on the floor, covering her face with her hands. Suddenly, the brave Shualina stood up for her friend. It occurred to the girl that Talina might have had some reason for that. Shualin helped her friend to her feet, but she also got hit. The director was furious. She grabbed Talina and started dragging her somewhere. The child shouted that it was a great opportunity, and she didn't want to lose it. Talina was indeed a little nervous that day. She was neatly dressed and had her hair done. She had also cleaned her room. Everything looked as if something was about to happen. Shualin immediately remembered the Bailot family. It was a family that used ki instead of mana. To clear his name, the man took a child from an orphanage and took care of him. And today was that very day. The girl decided that this was a great opportunity. She understood that in order to survive, she had to be under the protection of the Archduke. The child had a crazy thirst for life. The people who had abandoned her were no longer her family. Shualin took a broom and began to sweep. She wanted to find a place near the gate and be the first to meet the Archduke. Soon the child saw a huge carriage in front of her. The child wanted to see who had arrived. When the girl pushed the gate open, she saw Archduke Bailot and his son standing before her. The man had black hair and violet eyes. Shualin realized that she needed to smile. The boy who was next to the Archduke was very handsome. The girl asked the boy's name. He smiled and replied that his name was Vetrano. He was the main character and future Grand Duke. In the original book, he was a bad character who became a thief when he failed to possess a zella. The girl estimated that the boy must have been 11 years old. Shualin suggested that father and son go inside. Vetrano was surprised because the child was not afraid of them at all. At such moments, everyone would usually start crying because of the curse. The boy believed that the girl had the power of the elements hidden within her. It was the ability to direct nature and protect the imperial family. Such was spiritual power. Such power protected the ruler from the duke's curse. The young man asked how old the girl was. Shualin, counting on her fingers, replied that she would soon be 6. The man immediately noticed that the child looked much younger. The man asked what the girl's name was, but Shualina told him that she couldn't tell because the principal would scold her. If the child had said that she had said the name on Bailot's orders, then nothing would have happened to her. Shualina took her husband by the little finger and was about to take him to the director. The girl politely knocked on the door and asked permission to enter. The man was grateful to the child for escorting them and their son right to the door. The headmistress was delighted with the Duke's arrival. Duke Bailot settled comfortably on the sofa and informed the headmistress that he had been looking for a child for a month. The woman jumped, for she had an excellent candidate for such an important mission. The man asked the woman not to call anyone because he was sure who he would take. The man looked at Shualin and smiled sweetly at her. Then he looked at the director and announced that he was taking the girl. The woman was very surprised, but she did not dare to contradict the Duke. The man asked Shualin if she wanted to go with him. A smile appeared on the girl's face. She was very happy. A few minutes later, they headed for the carriage. Shualin asked if she would have work, laundry, and cooking to do in her new home. The Duke said that his family would treat the girl with respect. The man also warned that the girl would be served delicious food and that she would play fun games and rest. The Duke explained that the girl looked very thin and her skin was dry and dirty. Shualin worked hard and considered her body strong enough. But the man, looking at the child's fragile and unkempt hand, concluded that she was quite exhausted. The boy laughed. He explained to his father that it would take time for the girl to become fuller. Suddenly, Shualin could not hold back and almost fell. The Duke was frightened and asked how the child was doing. The child was quite surprised because she had no idea that the Duke himself would catch her. She realized with regret that she was dirty. But the Lord did not feel any disgust, but on the contrary, he treated her with understanding. When the man hugged the girl, she felt his strong arms, which seemed to protect her from all troubles. The girl even remembered her father, but she instantly dispelled such strange thoughts from herself. Shualin looked at her temporary brother Vetrano. The boy immediately said that he was not as weak as he looked. The young man raised his head high and proudly declared that he was a future knight. In fact, in the original book, Vetrano was awarded the title of Best Knight of the Continent. The girl remembered this and began to exclaim happily. The boy did not understand what had provoked such a strange reaction from the child. The groom apologized because suddenly a carriage had blocked the way, and he had to stop the horses. It occurred to Xuelin that if these were nobles, they would have known at once that it was the Duke's carriage. The girl was surprised by the behavior of the people who were riding in the other carriages. They almost bumped into them and did not even apologize. When the carriages were level with each other, Xuelin saw a man crying through the window. The groom asked the Duke for permission to deal with the impudent man. In return, the lord warned him not to brake so sharply when there were children in the carriage. Xuelin said she was very hungry. The Duke asked her to wait a bit as they were approaching a huge estate. After a while, the carriage stopped. Xuelin was delighted with the beauty that surrounded her. The girl realized that this month she would live in a beautiful estate. When the young people got out of the carriage, they were met by servants. They greeted the little lady politely and were glad to see her at the White Rose estate. The girl looked a little frightened, for she had never been greeted so magnificently before. The veteran suggested that they go inside, as Delai Poti had waited. It was the boy's younger brother. Xuelin heard strange sounds and was very frightened. She pressed her head against the Duke's chest. The man hurried to calm the child because it was just a camera. The servant apologized and bowed. He didn't want to scare anyone at all. Xuelin that the man wasn't just afraid of the nobles. She had a feeling he was scared for another reason. It was all because of the Duke's curse. The girl laughed and asked to take another photo. Then the young people were met by Edgar, the head butler of the White Rose estate. Xuelin asked the Duke to lower her to the ground. The child lifted her dress and bowed to the pleasant stranger. The man leaned over the little beauty and asked her to contact him if she had any questions. The child laughed. She was happy to be so warmly and well received. Xuelin was sure that the butler felt no ill will towards her. Soon Lucy, the head maid, arrived. Edgar explained that Lucy would help the girl with her clothes and would buy her clothes. The woman was amazed at how lightly the child was dressed. The clothes were too light and completely inappropriate for the weather. Xuelin was embarrassed because she had no other clothes. The woman did not see this as a problem. She had already prepared everything she needed in advance. Lucy promised that now the girl would eat deliciously and abundantly. The woman looked at the child with tenderness and touched her tiny hands. Lucy said that after dinner the girl would definitely take a warm bath. The woman also asked what dish Xuelin liked the most. The girl simply remained silent. She knew absolutely no food and was very worried that people would laugh at her. The Duke noticed that the child was a little tense and ordered Lucy to cook something to her taste. Xuelin realized with regret that her beautiful life would last only a month. The girl didn't have to get used to it, but she was already starting. Delai came down to the young people. The girl looked at him with curiosity. This was the second son of the Duke. Xuelin officially introduced herself to the boy, and of course bowed. The child felt very happy. The Duke took the girl in his arms and asked her to be careful as she almost fell again. The little lady repeated that her name was Xuelin, not Xuel. The Duke gently held the child close to him and said that the name Xuel suited her better. The boys also had no idea why the child did not want to be called simply Xuel. The young men told the girl that they were often called by their shortened names. Because of the curse, the boys didn't really communicate with anyone. Xuelin saw in the young men very good people. Delai asked what Xuelin's nickname was. The girl blinked her big, beautiful eyes silently. She didn't understand the meaning of the word at all. The Duke laughed and suggested that the girl's nickname be Shu. The little lady liked this nickname because it sounded quite beautiful and sweet. The man noted that the girl looked like a creamy dessert, but Xuelin had no idea what it was. The man was in a good mood, so he said that if the girl gained weight, she would look like a loaf of bread stuffed with cream. It occurred to Xuelin that her nickname would be Bread. The food was ready and the young people were invited into the hall. Vetrano took the girl in his arms and carried her to the table. Xuelin was surprised because she felt good and could not understand why she was constantly being carried in her arms. Dulai asked his brother why he was constantly carrying the child in his arms like a pillow. Vetrano was afraid that the girl might fall and break her leg. Xuelin couldn't understand what the boys were talking about. Dulai also wanted to take care of the girl, but his brother assured him that he was still young and had little strength. The boy also laughed and agreed to give Dulai the child only when he made 1,000 approaches. The boy decided that he would train hard and would definitely get permission. Lena admired the young men. She was struck by their sincerity and kindness. Xuelin desperately realized that she would like to become a part of their family. The child dreamed of having a family, and with such a wonderful father and brothers, a wonderful life would be ensured. Xuelin wanted to live in comfort and without threats, unlike the life that she, the princess, lived, fearing for her life. If the Bylots were really Xuelin's family, she would be very happy. She was glad to see her brothers like that. One of the young men leaned over to the girl and asked to be called simply Brother Vetrano. The other one also really wanted the girl to call him brother. Xuelin felt very happy. Suddenly, the girl's face turned very red and the boys became embarrassed. Lucy hurried to bring the hot dishes. The girl was stunned by so many amazingly beautiful dishes. Xuelin was convinced that their taste was simply unsurpassed. It was the first time she had seen anything like it. The surprised girl picked up the cake, and it seemed to her that it was a bread with cream. She immediately stuffed it into her mouth. For Xuelin, it was simply heavenly pleasure. She was completely ready to live such a carefree and sweet life. In the future, the girl wanted to eat only delicious food. Suddenly, the child covered her face with her little hands. The young men quickly got up and ran to Xuelin. The child began to vomit. Lucy quickly brought a bucket and was very scared for the child. Xuelin began to vomit. She felt sick and in pain. One moment, the girl found herself in the middle of a huge field. She could barely hear a man's voice coming from somewhere. The girl was familiar with that place. In front of her, she saw a young lady sitting, leaning against a tree. It was a spiritual mirror, a closed spiritual world. After a while, the girl opened her eyes and realized that she was lying on a bed. Lucy and the doctor were next to her. Also standing nearby were the Duke, Delay, and Vetrano. Everyone was very worried about the child's well-being. This was the first time this had happened to Xuelin, so she didn't even know what facial expression to make. The duchy's family doctor, whose name was Baden, asked the child if she was in pain. Xuelin coughed. It was difficult for her to speak. The doctor asked her not to rush and to speak slowly. The man asked what the girl ate in the orphanage. Xuelin barely said that she often ate cabbage soup in the orphanage. Because the girl ate so many new foods, her little stomach couldn't handle it and crashed. The child's body reacted especially badly to the cream that was in the cakes. All the food was so delicious that Xuelin couldn't stop in time. The doctor gave the girl medicine and asked her to eat only light meals. The child was very upset. The girl thought it was cruel because she could not eat delicious food. Xuelin even thought that she would have to eat the usual dishes. It turned out that the girl had been asleep for almost 2 days. The Duke and his sons were very worried about the life and health of the child. Xuelin noticed that the young men were standing far away from her, and she decided that it was because of her smell. The girl arrived at the estate already dirty, then she vomited and lost consciousness. Xuelin was horrified because she understood that she was too untidy and hurried to get up from the clean snow-white bed. Vetrano asked the girl not to get up abruptly. He wanted the child to lie down for a while and then go to the bathroom. The Duke immediately ordered Lucy to help the child. Xuelin noticed how the expression on the gentleman's face changed. The girl had no idea what she had to do to be loved. When the girl came out of the bathroom, Lucy sat her down in front of the mirror. The woman carefully combed Xuelin's curls. Since it was time for dinner, the lady asked how the child was doing. The girl looked at her reflection and felt sad. Xuelin had nothing to worry about, but looking into Lucy's eyes, she couldn't lie either. The woman told the girl that His Majesty had asked her to listen to his opinion. The man felt that Xuelin was very kind and had endured a lot of pain and suffering. The child thought the Duke was angry with her, for he had a rather stern face. The Lord noticed how nervous the girl was, and she felt powerless about it. Lucy asked Xuelin if she was afraid of His Majesty or the boys. The woman also asked if the girl felt any tingling or trembling in her body. The child looked at the woman silently. It was instinctive, because the Duke's family possessed immense power. Everyone feared the Lord and his children because of their energy. His Majesty was very concerned about the child's condition, thinking that the cause of her illness lay in their energy. But the doctor refuted the Duke's thoughts and said that it was not their fault. Because of the curse that had been passed down from generation to generation, many people avoided the Duke and his family. Many people had to suffer because of the curse. Xuelin knew this well. On the contrary, everything was too good to be a dream. The girl liked everything so much that she wanted to run away without thinking about anything. The child was still worried that the Duke would think her rude. The woman invited Xuelin to choose clothes, opening a huge dressing room. The girl was amazed. She had never seen such a large number of incredibly beautiful dresses. Lucy said that the Duke personally chose all the clothes for the girl. The woman suggested that the child take any dress. Shuelin's eyes widened. She didn't even know what to choose. Finally, the girl made her choice. There was very little time, so they bought what was left. The tailor was due to arrive soon and take measurements. His Majesty had ordered that the girl be carefully observed when she went out. Shuelin was amazed that the Archduke would go so far for her. The man had been warm to the girl from the moment they met. He asked Shuelin's opinion and paid attention to small details. The child didn't want good people to get hurt because of some misunderstanding. Suddenly the girl broke into a run. She stopped in front of His Majesty and Vetrano and asked to listen to her. The child said that the anxiety was related to the fact that her brother avoided her. Shuelin admitted that her heart ached when the Archduke looked at her like that. The child lowered her head and said that everyone in that house was surprisingly kind. Arriving at the estate, the girl felt like she had entered paradise. Tears welled up in Shuelin's eyes. In the orphanage, the girl was unwanted and constantly dirty. No one respected her opinion. There, Shuelin was a child unworthy of love. She even considered herself useless. Shuelin asked the Duke and his sons to hug her and hold her hands, and of course, to make her happy. The child understood why she was so anxious around the Duke. The man, like Shuelin, was alone in that world. The girl was rejected by her family, and the Grand Duke was isolated from society due to a curse. The child asked not to avoid her because it made her sad to think about it. The Duke leaned over and hugged the girl tenderly. Shuelin hugged the man tightly in return. Tears dripped from the child's eyes. Vetrano tried to calm the girl down and explained to her that she was not a dirty orphan, but his sister. The man asked how long it had been since the girl woke up. In his opinion, Shuelin had lost her strength after shedding so many tears. The man was about to tell the maid to bring the girl some soup. The child immediately brightened up. She walked and danced around the room. The Duke remarked that the girl was as cute as a dragonfly with wings. Shuelin had heard such a comparison. The Duke asked the girl to sit down at the table to eat while the food was still hot. The gentleman took a spoon and decided to feed the child. The soup was too hot. The girl's mouth felt like it was on fire and she started screaming. Lucy was very scared and came to find out what was wrong. The man thought that the girl must have been in pain because he had given her soup and she had screamed. The woman thought this was quite strange. When the pain subsided a little, Shuelin said that the Duke had given her a spoonful of soup, but it was very hot. The girl had burned her tongue. Lucy handed the little lady some water. Lucy explained to the Duke that he should have cooled the food before cooking the child. The husband thought that the girl's body was still very weak, even her tongue. But Lucy assured him that anyone would get burned if they ate a spoonful of boiling water. The Duke was very surprised, since nothing like this had happened to Windert and Delane in their childhood. Shuelin explained that the husband could not compare her and his sons, because the maids took care of feeding the boys. The child realized that the Duke had not done this on purpose. He had only wanted to show his care and feed her. The man promised that if the girl ate all the soup and took the medicine, she would get something tasty. The child was very happy to hear such wonderful news. The Duke and Shuelin made a promise to each other on their little fingers. Meanwhile, the young gentleman got into the carriage. Since the man was feeling well, he decided to continue the journey. The gentleman looked sadly at the beautiful scenery. Then he lowered his head and fell into deep thought. The man searched for his daughter for 6 years. A stillborn child had to be burned and buried 3 days after its birth. Empress Karaida, who gave birth to the child, was very weak and soon died. These were the words the man had heard from his second wife, Empress Elaine. Everyone around him thought it was strange to search for a dead child, in the hope that it was alive. The young lord still could not believe that the baby had died. It was obvious that after the birth of the child, the man felt its spiritual power. It sounded strange, but he still felt it. The young gentleman visited all the orphanages in their territory, holding on to one ray of hope. Little Lucas often depicted 2 children in his drawings. The boy explained that he was waiting for the baby to return. The child dreamed of teaching the baby how to wield a sword and playing with it every day. The eldest son, Lucas, was eagerly awaiting the return of the child his late mother had given birth to. The boy had always believed that the baby was alive. But as the gifts increased, his expression became increasingly sad. Azella was the daughter of Elena, who came from a fallen family. The woman entered into a contract marriage, under which she became the empress. The man felt sorry for the girl. but he never wanted to have children with the current empress. Azela was the unloved child in the family. Everyone told the man that he should bury the baby in his heart and let it go. Also, those who cared asked him to devote himself to the children who survived. But the man could not do that. He wanted to look at the child at least once. The man did not find what he was looking for, but he did not want to give up and was convinced that sooner or later he would find his child. Meanwhile, Lucy helped Shusha dress up. The girl looked like a princess. Delight admired the child and called her joyfully. Shualine couldn't understand why her brother called her several times, as if she were a puppy. It seemed to Delay that the girl was tired of studying, so he brought her something tasty. The boy took some treats out of his pocket and said that he would give her 2 pieces, but asked her not to say a word to anyone. Shualine adored meringue and was very happy with such a sweet gift. The boy turned to Vitreno, proud that the girl loved him more. Delay couldn't understand why his brother kept writing all day long. Shualine noticed that Vitreno kept notes of what she was doing. The girl saw that his brother wrote down her daily routine and diet for her. The boy consulted the doctors about this. It occurred to the girl that the incident of losing consciousness had frightened him very much. Suddenly, Vitreno put down all his notes and called Shualine to him. The girl happily ran to her other brother, but Delay wanted her sister to play only with him. He even suggested that they take up fencing and called her to him. At one point, Shualine became very upset. The brothers were pulling her around like a blanket. Shushu stood between them, but she didn't know who to run to. But Delay took the situation into his own hands and started running as fast as he could towards the girl, holding a sword in his hands. Vitreno also managed to grab his sword and defend himself. He scolded his brother for scaring the child. The older brother felt angry. He thought that Delay had completely lost his mind because he was swinging his sword right and left. Delay admitted his mistake and promised not to do it again. The boy leaned over to Shualine and asked if he had accidentally hurt her. But the girl laughed and said that everything was fine. The Duke was watching the children through the window. Meanwhile, a subordinate came into his office. The man reported that the investigation into the orphanage where the young lady was being held had been completed. Cahill said that the children in the orphanage were starving, and they were even spared an extra piece of bread. All the children were dressed out of season. The orphanage building had no heating, only the director's office was insulated. Judging by the condition of the orphanage, it was possible to conclude that the director had appropriated the allocated money for herself. There could be no other option. With the money from the ducal treasury, even without taking into account other donations, this orphanage would definitely not be in such poor condition. The Duke could not imagine how the director dared to do such a thing. His Majesty was usually calm and rational, but that day he was completely overcome with anger. It even occurred to Cahill that the little Lady Shualine would be a recognized daughter of the great house. The Duke asked Cahill to bring Shusha to him. A few minutes later, the girl entered His Majesty's office. Usually the child saw the Duke only during meals or tea. His Majesty asked the girl to come in and sit down. The man asked how the girl was doing in the orphanage. Shualine was surprised why the gentleman suddenly decided to ask about it. He looked cold as ice. Shualine had never seen the Duke in such a state before. It occurred to the girl that he did not like her and wanted to send her back to the orphanage. The child was stunned, for it had only been 2 weeks since she had arrived at the estate. Shualine had no idea what she had done wrong or what to do. She forced herself to think faster. Shushu thought that maybe she needed a family photo and a newspaper article for her public image. The girl decided to press for pity, or vice versa, to show how strong she was. Shushu dared to ask the Duke directly if he was going to send her back, since he no longer needed her. The child looked at the man and wondered if she had to return to the orphanage. Duke Bylot hurried to calm the child down, explaining that this was not what he meant at all. The man was surprised that such bad thoughts had entered the child's head. Since the Duke had mentioned the asylum, the child was confused and thought the worst. The man clutched his head and realized that he had been hasty with such a direct question. Since the girl felt much better, Dr. Baden allowed her to eat sweets. The Duke handed Shusha profiteroles. The man hurried the girl and asked her to eat quickly before the dessert melted and lost its taste. Shualine stretched out her little hands and took the dessert. The profiteroles were quite cold. They were profiteroles with ice cream. The child was surprised because she didn't know that ice cream should be eaten cold. The young gentleman, lowering his eyes, said that one person liked this dessert very much, as did Shu. Shu. The girl immediately understood that the Duke was referring to the Duchess. He had already told her that the lady had died after Dylan was born. The man asked the child not to be shy and to start eating. The girl thanked him sincerely. She really enjoyed the dessert. The Duke was happy that the child liked the delicacy and suggested that she come to him more often. Xuelin finally let go of her tension. She realized that the Duke was not going to send her back to the orphanage. The satisfied child continued to eat the profiteroles. The Duke brought up the subject of the orphanage again. He explained that he wanted to know how well the director of the orphanage was doing in her duties. Shushu finally understood what he was talking about. The girl had a chance to take revenge on the headmistress, who had insulted her and the other children. She intended to tell His Majesty everything. Shushu said that the headmistress was a kind aunt who always fed the children. The girl had heard more than once that the shelter existed thanks to rich people. But not everyone wanted to give money to their shelter, so the children had to help the director with everything they could. The Duke asked if the children had any responsibilities. The girl kindly told him that all the children worked hard. They had to be very good at sewing, washing, and cleaning. Xuelina said that after breakfast they always cleaned up and did sewing until dinner. Every day the children diligently sewed clothes that the principal sold to buy them food. The Duke was shocked that such young children worked 10 hours a day. The master asked the child if she was often beaten. The girl lowered her head and admitted that she was quite often, because she was unworthy of being lazy and did not work well. Xuelina confessed that she had tried with all her might to learn how to clean and wash perfectly so that she could later find a job as a servant in a rich family. Her husband's hands slowly and tightly clenched into a fist. The Duke did not want the girl with such beautiful hands to ever have to suffer again. At that moment, tears appeared in the child's eyes. The man asked Shusha not to cry. These were Xuelina's emotions. The man concluded that the director of the orphanage was a cruel woman, but the orphanage was a necessary institution for the Duke's name. The young lord's plans were to take the director's case to court and hire a new person. Xuelin was very happy because soon the orphans would no longer suffer because of such a terrible director, and their lives would improve. Dalai and her sister were going for a walk. The girl was let out of the estate for the first time, and the boy suggested going to the park. The child really wanted to go for a walk in the Central Park. She smiled happily and thanked her brother for calling her with him. Delay suggested taking his older brother with him next time. Since Vitreno was very busy, he refused to go for a walk. Delay, Shushu, and Lucy headed to the park in a good mood. Xuelina saw a girl holding some kind of drink in her hands. Her brother's eyes lit up, and he immediately offered Shusha the same. The girl was embarrassed and said that it wasn't necessary. As a sign of concern for his sister, the boy immediately ran to get a drink, asking him to wait. Lucy just managed to ask the child not to run, but Delay didn't hear her at all. Lucy found an empty bench and suggested that the girl wait for Delay there. The woman looked away for a moment, and when she turned back, Shushu was no longer next to her. The headmistress appeared before little Xuelin. Next to her was the Empress's servant. According to the plot of the novel, the Empress had a secret service of magicians from the White Tower at her disposal. Shushu was absolutely certain that the man was one of them. The headmistress did not possess magic, and even less did she have informants in the Duke's estate. The girl was convinced that it was the Empress who had ordered her servants to steal her. The headmistress looked at the girl intently and began to scold her for settling in well. Xuelina wondered where the woman had taken her, since there were still 2 weeks left before the end of her stay at the estate. It occurred to the girl that if the woman planned to ask for a ransom for her, then her job as director would be over. The child wondered why the lady would take such a risk and kidnap her at this particular time. The headmistress said that the girl was no good for anything, but circumstances had developed such that even she was needed somewhere. The lady told Xuelin that they were looking for her. The frightened child decided that they wanted to drain all her energy again. A month ago, Shusha had her energy drained so much that she almost died. The girl did not want to experience the terrible pain again. The stranger looked at the child with a smile. Xuelin begged the director to help her, but the woman turned away. She always looked the other way at what the magicians did to her. The child knew that she would never help her. Xuelin gathered all her strength into a fist and begged herself to calm down. She could still change the future. The time had not yet come for the Empress to imprison her in prison. The frightened child asked not to do anything to her, because a month ago all her strength had been taken away from her. The man calmly told the girl not to be afraid, promising that everything would be over soon. Shuelin saw a magic stone in the man's hands. It was the diamond from the novel, and she had already seen it with her own eyes, having entered this world. The diamond was Azella's secret. Azella, despite her royal blood, had no magical powers. She always wore a diamond that contained Shualina's power. The novel states that Shualina was born with magical powers that were destined to pass on to Azella. But Shushu did not steal Azella's power. The girls had different mothers. Azella was born without gifts. And it was not Shualina's fault. The child could not understand why in that novel a secondary character was made into a thief. This was just an excuse to tease Shusha. The girl was convinced that the diamond should not touch her. The child began to scream and call the Duke for help. The man in the cloak was angry because the child did not listen to him. Suddenly a miracle happened. The Duke appeared nearby with his eldest son and Lucy. His Majesty was terribly angry and ordered the scoundrel to leave Shuelin. The little lady was shocked. She could not have imagined that the Duke would find her. The man in the cloak tried to direct his power at His Majesty. The scoundrel made a magical barrier that was impossible to pass through. The stranger took the girl hostage. While the magician concentrated his power on the Duke, Shuelin tried to think of some way to free herself. She saw the diamond on the ground and realized that she had to get rid of it. Shu kept her eyes on the diamond. She knew that the Empress and Azella would never miss an opportunity to drain her of her power again, for they needed her. Shuelin realized with horror that if they took this precious stone, they would send someone again for her energy. The girl realized that she must immediately destroy the diamond. If the diamond were destroyed, the abusers would have to order a new one, and for a while they would be free from the child. Suddenly, the brother grabbed Shuelin. She was delighted, but pointed her finger at the stone and assured him that they must destroy it. The stranger tried to get the diamond, but Delay struck him with his sword. The boy was proud of himself and his well-honed crosscut. The Duke plunged his sword into the diamond and it split. His Majesty also pierced the magician's hand. Red blood flowed from his wound. Duke Bylot apologized to the children because he could not control himself. The magician died. Dalai was upset because he wanted to question his husband. The father asked his son not to worry because there were still people he was going to question. His Majesty sharply ran his sword through the director's hair. The woman fell to the ground and bent over from the unexpectedness. That day the man could not control himself properly, because he was in a strong anger. The headmistress fell on her knees before the Lord and asked for mercy. The woman confessed that she had committed a terrible crime. The Duke sharply replied that people were usually hanged for terrible crimes. His Majesty had many questions for the woman. He warned the director that no matter how much she despised him, she would still be forced to answer his questions. The Duke accused the woman of torturing the unfortunate child entrusted to her. Shuelin looked at the headmistress without any pity. The woman had tortured the child for a long time, but she looked worthless in the face of the Duke. If Shuelin were even a little stronger, and if she had known her true origins earlier, perhaps the headmistress would have bowed down to her in exactly the same way. Shua hugged her brother tightly and started crying. The boy promised the girl that no one would ever dare to hurt her again. Dalai assured the girl that she was now under their protection. The Duke asked the headmistress who the magician was, but the woman said frankly that she could not tell anything because she would be killed. Shu knew that the woman was not a person who would keep secrets. She would have given everyone away long ago. For some reason, the woman was very resistant, as if she had a sense of loyalty. The Duke thought the director was stupid because after such events she still hoped that she would be left alive. The Duke called his sons and asked them to watch carefully. The man put a sword to the woman's head and said that even the smallest criminals were a threat and must be destroyed. Vetrano asked his father to stop, as Shuelin was watching everything closely, and the boys were afraid for her mental health. The man immediately asked Vetrano to take the child home. The Duke also asked to give the child warm milk and make sure she rested well. The headmistress desperately called Shu and asked her to save her. The woman repented of her evil deed. Shuelin looked at the woman with wide eyes. She immediately asked the Duke if he would really make the lives of the children in the orphanage better. The man nodded his head in the affirmative. The child asked with a glimmer of hope if no one would be beaten in the shelter anymore, if the food would be tasty, and if there would be no mold on the walls. The Duke promised that the children's lives would change for the better. The girl looked at the woman with contempt because she had never helped her. There was no more room for forgiveness. Shuelin felt calm because she knew that the director would not harm her again. Since the diamond was destroyed, the Empress was forced to leave Shuelin alone for a while. Meeting the headmistress was the worst experience of the girl's life. The child easily said goodbye to the cruel woman. Delay looked at Shusha tearfully. It seemed to him that the girl was in pain. But Shuelin refuted his brother's worries because she was not injured at all. Everyone was very surprised and Delay cried. He lowered his head and said that he was not worthy of being Shuelin's older brother. The boy could not protect his sister and it hurt him. The girl tried to calm her brother because the evil magician had closed her from everyone with a barrier. This potion was intended for Shuelin. The child really wanted the Duke with his sons to come and save her. And so it happened. For an orphan who had no one to trust in this life, it was an unaffordable luxury. But at that moment, Shuelin felt that they would all find her and protect her. The girl asked her brother not to cry. That time, Shu fell into the clutches of evil people, but her loved ones saved her. The girl understood that sooner or later the Empress would come after someone else for her power. Everything turned out well, thanks to the fact that the Duke protected the child. Shuelin had no idea what would happen next. It even occurred to the girl that because of her, the Bailot family would become the Empress's sworn enemies. The Duke's family was the most noble in the empire, but the Empress outranked them because she came from a royal family. The imperial house of Bertild, from which the Empress descended, owned fertile lands. The lands were the source of food for the empire. In contrast, the Duke's family did not participate in politics, and therefore did not have such power. Perhaps not only the Marquis Bertild and the Empress, but the entire court was against Shushu. The girl wanted to protect her foster family, but she didn't know if she had a chance to win. Delay treated Shusha with great care. The boy suggested that the child put her to sleep and not be afraid, because he wanted to be near. The girl's face seemed to be burning. The brothers even thought their sister had a fever. Dalai went to get a doctor and asked the girl to rest. The child said she wasn't sick at all. She just asked for a sip of water. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a strong jet of water poured down on Shuelin, and she immediately became very cold. In a warm embrace, trying to warm her up, but the girl was still cold and wanted to warm herself by the fire. Suddenly, the child was engulfed in flames, and she was thrown into a terrible heat. Shuelin felt very sick and lost consciousness. The child heard a voice. She decided it was Vitreno or Delay, but the voice whispered that it was a dream. Someone reported that Shushu had signed a contract with him and, stroking his head, assured him that the pain would soon go away. An unfamiliar voice was calming the child. The girl's thoughts were confused. She didn't understand what contract he was talking about. It occurred to the child that these might be memories, but she didn't know for sure. Opening her eyes, Shuelin saw a boy in front of her, who said that the seal hadn't been broken yet, so he could only visit her like this. The young man promised that it would only hurt for a moment, but that was the price to pay for fully unlocking the girl's potential. The boy gently stroked Shusha's head again and asked her to get well soon. The young man assured Shusha that she would definitely be happy. He also asked her to find him as soon as possible, as he would be waiting. Meanwhile, the brothers couldn't find a place to stay, because Shuelin had been unconscious for a long time. The doctor tried to convince the overly worried boys that the girl would soon come to her senses. The doctor explained that Shushu had lost all her energy. Vitreno could not understand how this could have happened. First, water poured over the girl, which came from nowhere, and then she was engulfed in flames, after which she lost consciousness. The nervous boy grabbed the doctor by the clothes because the child was not coming to his senses. Shuelin came to, and everyone in the room breathed a sigh of relief. She thanked him for his concern and immediately asked what was the fate of the headmistress. The Duke said that the woman got what she deserved. The man left out the details because he didn't want the child to hear unpleasant things. Shuelina asked to tell her the truth because in her opinion she had the right to know. Herzog said that the woman took the money allocated for the orphanage, depriving the children. Moreover, she insulted Shusha and later even stole it. The Duke admitted that the woman was executed on the spot. The girl reacted to the crime with understanding. The man realized that the child was absent-minded, but he wanted to introduce her to someone. A man named Igraine greeted the girl and said that he was a magician from the Blue Tower. He had come because he had been told that Shuelin might have magical powers. The child was frightened. The Duke asked the child to trust him. Igraine asked how the evil magician had used the girl. Shulin told her in a trembling voice that the man had pressed the diamond to her body, and at that time her vision went dark, and she was rapidly losing all her strength. It felt like Shusha's whole body was being squeezed out like a wet garment. It hurt a lot, but she didn't even have the strength to scream. This happened all the time when the girl lived in the orphanage. The Duke believed that those unscrupulous people deserved to die. The magician had come to help Shuelin. He had to determine what the girl's magical power was so that something like this would not happen again in the future. Shushu's ability was spiritual energy. The girl was very afraid that the Duke, having learned about her ability, would send her to the royal family. A meeting with the Emperor's daughter would not bring the child anything pleasant. No one in the royal family was waiting for Shusha, and she did not want to go there. The Duke saw how much the girl was worried. Her hands were trembling. The man gently stroked the child and said that he had learned a lot. The girl looked up at the man, and it occurred to her that the principal had told him something about her. Shuelin saw kindness and care in her husband's actions and the way he looked at her. The child understood that the Duke would find out about everything sooner or later, so she decided to tell him everything right away and trust him completely. Igraine was an ice mage. The man warned that it would be a bit cold. The mage began his procedure. Suddenly he stopped because he did not understand what had happened. The man was surprised because it was not magic. Dalai clearly saw water and fire appear around the girl. The magician was quite surprised because he could not even think that the girl could have the gift of elemental magic. A special energy was emanating from Shuelin's head, and it wasn't mana. It occurred to Windy that the man meant the gift of spiritual power. Everyone was surprised because only members of the royal family possessed spiritual power. The Duke could not believe that the girl had royal blood. After some thought, the man decided that of all the direct descendants of the emperor, only the late empress could have been her mother. Shuelin was the same child who had been said to have died shortly after birth. The Duke sincerely thanked the magician for having so accurately revealed the girl's potential. The Duke warned the man that no one should know who Shuelin was. The magician bowed and promised to keep everything a secret. The Lord looked closely at the child and asked if she would like to return to the royal family. The man also asked if the girl wanted to be a princess. Shushu lowered her head and replied that she didn't want to. Tears appeared in the child's eyes. Shuelin said that if she were a real princess, no one would have let her end up in an orphanage. But it happened, and no one protected her. The girl hugged the Duke and exclaimed that she was just an ordinary orphan. The child thought that she was no longer useful to His Majesty. The Duke refuted the child's words and said that he did not need an orphan for a good reputation in society, but he needed a daughter. The man wiped the salty tears from the child's face. He also extended his hand and offered the girl to be his daughter. His Majesty swore to protect Shuelin with his own life. The Duke put his hand in the inside pocket of his jacket and said that he was looking for the right moment. The man took out a piece of jewelry from there. This treasure had been passed down from generation to generation for a very long time. The jewel has been treasured since the moment of the child's birth about 100 years ago. The man added that if the girl decides to become his daughter, he will take a family photo and put it in the pendant. The Duke assured that even if the girl refused, he would still continue to protect her. The decision was Shuelin's. The child planned to immediately answer that she wanted to become part of the family. The girl was very worried that she might cause problems in the Grand Duchy. It was very strange, but Shuelin could not utter a single word. Several days passed after the conversation. After Shu's spiritual power manifested, her health became much better. The girl no longer tripped when walking. The child thoughtfully examined the pendant. The boys quietly sat down next to their sister on the sofa. Vetrano immediately asked if the girl had decided to join their family. The young man immediately apologized because he didn't want to put pressure on his sister. Vetrano admitted that his father asked him not to push the girl into making a decision, but the young man was very interested. He immediately suggested that Shusha live with them. The child confessed that she would very much like to live in a Grand Duchy, but she frankly said that she was worried about the reputation of the estate. The boys did not fully understand why the child was thinking so deeply. Delay suggested that his sister take a walk. The children approached the orphanage, but Shuelin did not immediately recognize him. The kids walking nearby immediately ran up and greeted the girl. Shushu began to look very different from the children at the orphanage. The girls asked how their friend was doing and complimented her. The girls said that thanks to Shush, The orphanage had changed a lot. The children knew from the stories that it was Xuelin who had helped get rid of the cruel director. A wonderful woman had taken her place. The girls thought that Xuelin was taken to the duchy because she changed orphanages. Suddenly, Shushu asked where Telin was. It turned out that the girl had been sitting in a closed closet and had become very ill. As her health deteriorated, the director sent the child to another orphanage. When the children died, adults would come to the orphanage to check on them. The former director told the children that they couldn't die. Although Shushu and Telin were not on the best of terms, she still hoped that the girl was in a safe place. The little lady said goodbye to her friends and returned to the carriage. The child asked the brothers why they had brought her to the orphanage. He asked the girl briskly how things were at the orphanage and whether it was different from the duchy. The child agreed with her brother's words. Betreno said that the doors of the estate were always open for the girl, and also asked her not to worry about her reputation. Xuelin shone everywhere like a star. The girl and her brother went to the estate. Then the Duke took the child all the way to the third floor, where she had never been. The whole story of their family was kept there. Portraits hung on the walls. The portrait of her husband was there too. In addition, portraits of descendants were also hung on the walls. There weren't many children in the Grand Duchy, so the space was still full. It occurred to Shushu that the Duke had joked that her portrait would hang there too. The man showed the girl a portrait of the founder. He was a dragon, which is why his eyes were so elongated. Xuelin had no idea who a dragon was. The man explained that it was a beast that looked like a lizard but with wings. Shushu blinked her eyes in interest. The Duke tried to explain to the girl more and more clearly. Suddenly the child heard a noise. She turned around and saw the boy from her dreams. Xuelin asked the lord who the boy was, but the man seemed to hear and continued talking about dragons that had long since ceased to exist. The worried child began to tug at the Duke's clothes, attracting his attention. The girl pointed her finger at the unknown young man and asked who he was. But the Duke saw nothing and did not understand what the child was talking about. Then Shushu realized that she saw something that others did not see. The Duke and Shushu approached the crown, and it seemed quite small to the girl. He explained that the dragon was very young. Then the man asked if the girl wanted to try on the tiara. The jewel had not been taken for over 100 years. Shushu was quite surprised, since the gentleman wanted to get it for her. The diadem was a national treasure, and the girl was not sure that this was the right thing to do. The Duke easily opened the display case and began to take out the tiara. Shushu was very worried because she was afraid that it might accidentally fall. The man waved his hand and assured that in that case they would make a new one. The Duke placed a crown on the child's head and named her Princess Xuelin de Baylot. The man explained that although the Grand Duchy was a vassal of the Avnisian Empire, he was still its head. The Duke assured that if the child became his daughter, she would be named a princess. In that hall were kept relics for daughters. The Lord hoped that Xuelin would accept such gifts. The child could not understand what the Duke was talking about. The man offered the girl to become his daughter, and she found it very strange. The Duke explained that Xuelin had every right to look and choose what would belong to her. The master warned that he had not forced the girl to do anything. He was even prepared for Shusha to refuse, but he would not take anything from her. The child was amazed because these were all very valuable relics. Xuelin that if the room became completely empty and girls appeared in the family, they would have nothing left. The Duke thought about it and explained that he was not interested in the descendants of other generations. At that moment, the man was trying to persuade Xuelin to become his daughter, and the man didn't understand why he should be worried about other girls. The beautiful clothes and delicious food seemed like a beautiful dream to the girl, but she knew very well that if she became too greedy, a sad end would await her. She was not sure that she would be able to fully repay the Duke for his kindness. Xuelin lowered her head and turned to the Duke. She asked what would happen if she accepted the gifts but refused to adopt him. The man noticed that the child was worried and offered her to become his real daughter. Shushu couldn't figure out what to do. She wasn't sure if the Duke could protect her, and if she could protect him. The girl looked at the man intently and assured him that he didn't understand all the details. If the Duke understood everything and still accepted Shusha, if he stayed by her side, the child would truly be happy. The girl directly told her husband that if he adopted her, he might have problems. The master guessed that the child meant the Empress. The influential family would not then have tried to come up with a plan to steal the orphan. The child understood that if she refused to become a princess, the Duke would begin to suspect the Empress. The man was surprised that Shulini knew about the situation with the Empress. The girl confessed that she had overheard this when they tried to steal her power. Only a few days ago, Shushu had learned that she had possessed her as a princess. The child said that in reality, Azella had no abilities. She had deceived everyone. For that reason, unknown magicians had tried to commit the theft. Shuilin regretfully said that they would continue their attempts. Shuilin was very worried that the duchy might be in danger because of her. The girl also added that the Empress might see her husband as an enemy. The man confidently hinted that the duchy was not so weak as not to protect her daughter. The girl suggested that the Empress might prove stronger. This time the child was lucky, but the magicians could come again. Shulin was worried that bad people might take her brothers or Lucy hostage. In the plot, the Empress had thought through every detail. A great danger was coming. The man assured the child that the duchy was also hiding its power. Shushu explained to her husband that danger and hardship would befall them. The child raised her head to the Duke and asked again if he really wanted to adopt her. The Duke, in turn, asked if the child really did not want to return to her biological parents. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. She lowered her head and said that they were not her family. The man wondered if the girl had ever seen her family. Unfortunately, Shuilin had never seen her parents. She didn't think she was really a princess. The girl felt sad and hurt. She wondered if she was really a princess. Why did she have to live like this? Shushu's father was the emperor, the hereditary prince, and even he couldn't protect her. The man loved only Azella. This was the world of the original novel. Everyone was only concerned about the main character, and that could not be changed. The girl was not destined for happiness. She had no family at all, and she felt lonely. The Duke took Shulin by the hand and firmly said that he and his sons would become her new family. No one would touch her anymore. The child began to cry from hopelessness. She considered her desires selfish because she wanted to live a happy life. At that time, the child felt happy. Shushu definitely wanted to return the kindness of the Duke, and in her heart she really wanted the man to become her father. The prince was moved and tenderly hugged the little one to him. The man assured the child that children owed nothing to their parents. The Duke realized with regret that the girl had many emotional scars. He could not imagine how long they would last. The child asked the Duke if he would love her just like that. The brothers started a conversation between father and sister and shouted at the girl not to ask such questions. Delay happily asked Shusha if she would really be his sister. The boy could not believe his luck. The young men considered this a wonderful decision and promised to protect their sister because she had made them happy. The young men, like Shuilin, had no one to rely on because they were just as lonely. They all wanted to love and be loved and to stay together, escaping loneliness. At that moment, they all became one family. One evening, the Duke was putting the little girl to bed. He took out several books and wondered which one the child would like. Shuilin was very happy because his father wanted to read a book to her. The man asked his daughter what book she liked. The girl pointed to one with her finger. The father reprimanded his daughter for continuing to call him Duke. He reminded her that they were now father and daughter. In her mind, it was easier for the child to call her husband Dad. In real life, it was hard for her to get that word out of her head. It occurred to the girl that Shushu still remembered the betrayal of her own family, and that's why she couldn't say the word. Shuilina didn't want to just give up. After a few tries, she succeeded. The husband was very happy with such a dreamy word and invited the child to lie down. He opened an interesting book and started reading. The man read awkwardly, changing his intonation. The child had always dreamed of having such a father. Shuilin felt love for her father, and she was happy next to him. After a few minutes, the girl fell into a deep and sweet sleep. The father wished the child good night and sweet dreams, and looked at him for a long time. Then he quietly got out of bed and left the room. The girl had a strange dream. Beautiful flowers were growing all around. Shuilin wanted to pick them, but she heard a voice telling her to wake up, because it was dangerous to go any further. The child opened her eyes and smelled the scent of flowers. Shuilin was very scared because she saw a man in a black cloak in front of her, and he was tied up. At first the child thought it was a murderer, but after thinking about it, she realized that if he had wanted to get rid of her, he would have long ago stuck the blade that seemed to be glued to his chest. On the man's belt hung a bag that could even fit a child. The girl realized with horror that the Empress was trying to kidnap her. Shusha was seized with incredible horror and began to scream at the top of her lungs. The Emperor's son jumped out of bed. The boy could clearly feel Shulin's aura. There was no one to teach her how to use the force. The young man hoped that the child was in no danger. The boy went down and approached his father, and just opened his mouth to say something, but the man already knew everything. Although it was night outside, the emperor was sure that there were many unnecessary eyes around. The man set up a barrier with spiritual power and listened carefully to his son. The young man was confused and said that he felt his sister's aura. The man admitted that he felt it too. Shuelin's spiritual power aura came from the Grand Duchy. It occurred to the boy that the child was there. The man could not say for sure, but he understood that the child was alive. It turned out that the empress had lied about the child's death. The woman had hidden the child before the funeral. The emperor had no idea how a woman could have dared to kidnap his child. Whoever was behind it, the emperor was ready to take full revenge. The man looked at his son and promised that he would finally find his little sister and keep his promise. Duke Bailot came to hear Shuelin's cry. The lord was very surprised because there was a whole bunch of flowers around. The duke ordered the guards to look for the child and catch him, and interrogate everyone involved. The girl was found in the middle of the bunch of flowers. Last time the child used force, it seemed as if her head was about to come off. That time the girl felt relieved. Vitreno asked Shuelin what had happened. The girl said that she had been playing among the vines in her dream, and when she woke up, she saw many flowers and a tied man next to her. The child hoped that no one would think that she was a monster. Vitreno thought the child was incredible. The boy wished that the next time the girl dreamed of a chocolate room. The duke thought deeply. The girl thought it was all nonsense, but judging by the expression on her father's face, she was stronger than she thought. After some time, the happy girl was weaving a necklace. After Shuelin was officially accepted into the duke's family, her father assigned the girl a knight, Hilorian, and a personal servant, Nina. Shushu did most of the work herself, which she was proud of. Nina asked how the girl had come up with such a wonderful idea. The child told her that Lucy had given her a bow, Edgar a scarf, and her brother a bracelet. Everyone had given her gifts in honor of her adoption, and Shuelin wanted to thank everyone. Shushu got up from her chair and said that she needed to go to the second floor. The girl put her finger to her lips and whispered that it was a secret, and that her father didn't need to know about it yet. Hilorian walked next to Shuelin. The woman thanked the child for such a valuable gift, because it was an honor for her family. Suddenly, the girl thought that she had done nothing special, and everyone was very happy for her. The woman looked at the child and smiled. She said that children are loved for no reason. At that moment, Shushu heard the conversation of two maids. The women were talking about a decree being issued in the capital for the sudden appearance of another member of the royal family. The girl could not understand how this was possible. On the way, Shuelin met Vitreno. She came specifically to the brothers. Delay, when he saw his sister, ran to her as fast as he could. The older brother asked what was hanging around the knight's neck. Delay did not like such a strange pendant. Hilarion boasted that it was a medal for the title of the best knight, and that Lady Shuelin had made it herself. The girl decided to leave, as she thought that her brothers did not like her work. Vitreno tried to cheer up the girl and wanted a medal like that too. Shushu asked the boy to bend over and awarded him a wonderful medal for the best rescuer. Delay was embarrassed. He did not want to offend his sister at all. The young man threw himself into her arms and begged her to give him such a wonderful medal as well. Shuelina thought that everyone was happy with the gifts not because of their beauty, but because she had made them. The girl decided to tease her brother, because he was the only one who had spoken so categorically about her efforts. A small scuffle broke out between the children, and they even had a little fight. The boy made excuses to his sister that he didn't want to offend her, and said to himself that he liked even ugly things. Shushu took it personally and decided that she was also ugly. After a while, the quarrel between the children ended, and the girl still gave Delay a gift. The boy was very happy to become the owner of a new medal. Shuelin said goodbye to her brothers and headed to the duke. A few minutes later, the girl went into her father's office. The man could not understand why everyone was so happy to see him. It seemed to the child that her father was not in the best mood. The girl hurried to give her father a gift because everyone else already had one except him. The child was sure that was why the duke felt sad. Shuelin handed her father the medal, but the man did not even smile. The duke was upset because he was the last on the child's list. The man thought he was more important than everyone else. Shushu even thought that his father did not want to accept the medal. The child enthusiastically told me that she had specially made a medal for the best dad in the world. She also added that she had written nice words and even sprinkled glitter on it. The Duke looked at the child and asked for his gift. Shuilin personally wanted to put a medal around his father's neck. She asked him to bow his head and slowly awarded him. The girl smiled and immediately asked if her father liked the gift. A smile appeared on the man's lips. He praised the child and thanked her. The Duke was about to tell the child something. She listened attentively. The man said that the royal palace had issued a decree. A wave of spiritual power was felt, indicating royal lineage. The child had already heard a similar conversation from the maids. She could not understand why they suddenly decided to look for her. The girl was upset because she did not understand why her former family suddenly decided to ruin her life. The Duke asked if the child regretted becoming part of his family. The man said that it was normal to miss family, but Shuilin very emotionally denied her father's words. Shushu explained that she didn't regret anything at all. The child didn't miss her former family, but on the contrary, she was angry with them. Only now has the girl finally found happiness, and her former family suddenly decided to find her. For Shuilin, family was her father and brothers. The girl looked at her father sadly and asked him to promise her that even if the emperor himself came to him, he would not give her up. The man assured the child that he would not give her to anyone unless she wanted to. The Duke still wanted to tell the child something. The girl tensed up because she did not know what information her father wanted to tell her. The man explained to his daughter that she must learn noble manners. The father wanted to find a worthy teacher for the girl. He looked closely at Shusha and asked if she had any objections. Shuilin, on the contrary, was delighted. She promised to study diligently, as she really wanted to become a noble lady worthy of the family of the Grand Duke. The father was delighted with his daughter's words. She was like a role model because she had a thirst for knowledge. The man promised the girl that he would definitely find the best teacher for her in the capital. Meanwhile, Elena read an advertisement in which the Grand Duke of Bailat was looking for a tutor for his daughter. The father promised the woman to personally take care of the matter, but sent only one servant for the girl, and a misunderstanding arose. The woman realized that the child was now under the protection of the Grand Duke, which meant that it would be much more difficult to reach her. Elena became part of the royal family through marriage, and had no magical abilities. She wanted to take away Shuilin's magical power so that she could never awaken. The woman's plans were to transfer the girl from one orphanage to another, so that the emperor would never find her. But the fact that Shuilin's adoption became public property confused her plans. If it weren't for the emperor's decree, Elena would never have even known that Shuilin had awakened. It occurred to the woman that perhaps the situation could somehow be turned to her advantage. The emperor expected Elena to explain why she hadn't found the girl herself. She was going to prepare an alibi for herself. But the woman wasn't upset because it was just a game. Elaine's mind. She decided to do everything she could to make the Grand Duke regret adopting Shuilin. The girl greeted her new teacher. The woman was quite strict and immediately reprimanded the child for having absolutely no good manners. The lady added that a lady should smile gracefully and modestly. Lima Bain was a professor at the Royal Academy. Before she even said hello to the child, she explained that teeth should not be visible when smiling because it was vulgar. Shuilina felt tense because she had not even had time to get closer to the lady when she immediately started making remarks to her. Lima Bain said that she understood the girl's condition and the reasons why she had not had the opportunity to study. The woman noted that the life of a simple orphan had a great impact on Shuilin's behavior. The lady was ready for a significant correction of the girl's behavior. The child froze under the woman's gaze. There was pity and contempt in her eyes, but it was not the pity with which Lucy, her father, and her brothers looked at the girl. Nevertheless, the woman smiled and said that she had come to change Milady's deeply ingrained habits. The lady wanted to make the child a wonderful little lady. Shuilina sensed that something was wrong. The woman said that the girl behaved like an ordinary child from an orphanage. Shusha could not understand what it meant to behave like a noble lady at that time. The girl immediately asked if she really had to be impeccable in everything to be considered a noble lady. The lady nodded and said that it was a must. Lima Bain noted that Shuilin's pronunciation was clear enough, but she asked the girl to try repeating her question again. Shuilin tried to formulate her question several times, but the woman was not satisfied with the child's efforts. Lima Bain admitted that she had been told about the girl's brilliant mind, but she was disappointed. Lucy and Nina praised Shuelin for her intelligence. The girl was upset because she thought the women were doing it to cheer her up. But then it occurred to Shulin that maybe her new teacher didn't like her.